Your most accurate forecast from the First Coast News Weather Team, sponsored by AC Designs.
Good evening, folks. I'm meteorologist Ross Mummah, joined by Chief Meteorologist Tim Deegan, trying to stay warm in here. The chill has set in, Tim.
It has set in. You know, for anybody who doesn't realize how unusual this is for our area, I was sort of enjoying our opening graphic, which is beautiful. But you notice it has an umbrella on the beach with a thunderstorm in the distance. Probably not many beach umbrellas out next couple of days.
Yeah, probably not. The tank tops and swimming trunks can probably stay packed away for a little while longer. We've got some winter weather on the way here tomorrow night and into Wednesday morning. A pretty rare event, not only just for Jacksonville, but for much of the First Coast. It's kind of ironic, what was that, a week or so ago, one of our reporters did a story on the snow event and snowstorm back in 1989, and who would have thought just a few weeks later we'd be talking about it potentially happening again here.
Let's be honest. We talked about this last fall, that Whit and Murphy, maybe even before that, Whit and Murphy during my last year here at the station give us hurricanes and then some kind of ice event. So.
Hey, we just want to send you off with a bang, right?
If anybody wants to blame anybody, maybe you can blame me.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to pull the graphics up here then. Winter storm warnings have been issued all across the southeast quadrant, really, of the United States. You can see it there, pretty much from Corpus Christi, Texas, up through Houston, New Orleans, Biloxi, Mississippi, Mobile, Alabama, all the way to the First Coast here. So winter storm warning in effect. You also have winter storm watches, winter weather advisories just a little bit further north. But zooming in, you can see the dividing line is primarily I-95 south, or across the southern part, or maybe I should say Highway 17 down in Clay and Putnam County. But the western half of Duval is included in that, and then all of Nassau and all of our southeast Georgia counties will be included in this winter storm warning. It just started at 4 p.m., or I guess it goes into effect at 4 p.m. tomorrow technically, and then it runs until 9 or 10 a.m. Wednesday morning. Tim?
Yeah, we can sort of get technical here. I think it begins at 4 p.m. for some of our Georgia counties and begins at 7 p.m. for northeastern Florida. But basically, it's in effect, right, to let people know what's happening. I thought maybe we should initially have a discussion about, what are the thresholds for a winter storm warning. And I guess I'll start off on the easy part, Ross, and that is that for those of you not under the shading, that doesn't mean you might not have a brief period of freezing rain or some sleet as it all comes to an end. But basically that means we don't think you're going to have a major issue as far as transportation. Do you think that's a fair way to put it?
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. And in some instances, I know they've done this out in Oklahoma, where I used to forecast. They would extend the warnings if needed to include areas that may not have been initially included in that. So, yeah, I think that's a good point. That just because you're not in the warning itself doesn't mean you still couldn't potentially see some sort of a wintry weather or at least minimal impacts here once the storm arrives. But another point we just kind of want to emphasize.
I'm going to triple underline this, folks, so listen to what Ross is saying. Please.
Yes. So the daytime tomorrow, you will not see any freezing rain or sleet or snow. None of that during the day. It will be pretty overcast. It's going to be damp. We're going to see some off and on stray to scattered showers, mainly along the coastline, or at least northeast Florida. Southeast Georgia, I think, will be a little bit drier, especially for the inland areas. All of the wintry precipitation that we do have, that will start to arrive after sunset, a little bit earlier for southeast Georgia. We'll get into the exact timing for everyone then. But, for Jacksonville, it'll be much more of a midnight, overnight, and into early Wednesday morning thing. So I just want to stress, at least during the day tomorrow,
right,
you'll be okay.
So I think we should, to be obnoxiously clear, I've heard some asking about, gosh, why are therefore Duval County schools and other schools southward opened tomorrow? And that's because, again, we're not expecting any type of danger for students either going to school or coming back on Tuesday.
Yeah. And again, this will be a Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. This is just kind of giving you an idea, the overall gist of what to expect with regards to precipitation type. So inland, southeast Georgia, so up towards the Okeechobee, pretty much from Folkston north up through Waycross. So northern Ware, Pierce counties, northern Brantley County as well, probably has the best chance to see not only some snow, but possibly accumulating snow.
Wouldn't you say that, just for those wondering, that Waycross north probably has the best chance of some type of frozen precipitation almost the whole event?
Oh, yeah, the whole event. Yeah, I don't think they see much rain, if any, at all.
And then south of there is where the rest of us see rain. And the big question is, when does it go over to freezing rain or sleet, and in a few spots, maybe flakes?
Yeah, I mean, especially if you live in, I would say, eastern Clay County, especially right along the St. Johns River, but more so even further south. So Putnam, the southern half of St. Johns, Flagler County, for the most part, you probably don't have to worry about any sort of wintry precipitation. Maybe just a few flakes on the back side of this, but not enough to be any sort of impact.
Yeah.
For the most part, I mean, a lot of you folks who live much further south, you're just going to get a cold, miserable rain tomorrow and overnight and into Wednesday morning.
Yeah, so
it'll be a different story.
No,
for the
exactly. So for those folks, it's really just a matter of, if you're going to be traveling north and west, just be aware of it gets messy. So therefore, officially, we're calling it a weather impact alert, and that pretty much covers the time that Ross was talking about. So from 7 p.m. tomorrow evening through midday Wednesday, and we're saying midday Wednesday because although I think any significant precipitation will end earlier than that, we're just playing it safe as far as for those bridges that might really ice over, especially maybe southeastern Georgia, just to make sure those roads are back to just wet. We're saying Wednesday. I wouldn't be surprised, Ross, if in many locations, especially Duval South, that even if we get some ice by 10 o'clock in the morning, those bridges are in pretty good shape, right?
Yeah, I would think so as well. Yeah, it's going to be those northern areas with some of those bridges, those overpasses that you could still see some of the road conditions be pretty rough, still be iced over and pretty slick in some spots. But yeah, you mentioned the precipitation. I mean, I think most of this will be over by 8 a.m. maybe. But then, yeah, some of those icy spots will still linger around until our morning's temperatures start to warm up here a little bit. Now,
let me just say one thing, Ross. I'm sorry. For those who maybe are just joining us and you haven't seen us present the weather, we're just putting out these general weather impacts. In just a few moments, we're going to get down to it county by county because there's going to be a huge variety around the area. So I know a lot of you have those questions. We'll be getting to that pretty soon. We just sort of want to give you the overall headline first.
This right here, this is just kind of giving you an idea of the hour by hour for Jacksonville specifically. So this starts at 7 p.m. tomorrow night. Temperatures will still be around 40 degrees, potentially into the upper 30s. I don't really think any sort of wintry precipitation will be an issue until after midnight in Jacksonville, but more than likely it'll be closer to about 3 to 4 a.m., and then that will continue up until about 7 to 8 a.m. when the precipitation clears on out. So again, this is hypercentric specifically to Jacksonville tomorrow night into Wednesday morning. Take close look at those temperatures. These might be 1 or 2 degrees warmer than what we actually see, Tim.
Yeah, and since you said that, folks, this is one of those situations, especially because our main concern from Duval County South will be freezing rain and not snow, that truly a difference of 1 or 2 degrees is going to matter in a huge way. I'll give this this morning as an example on the other side of the coin. Officially, we dropped to 33, and officially nobody in Jacksonville dropped to freezing. Now, the fact is, for all of us, it was cold, but unless you have plants, does it really matter whether it's 32 or 33? Not really, right? It's just plain cold. But when it comes to having precipitation coming down, and if that precipitation brings the temperature down to the dew point and it's 32 versus 33, just that 1 degree is going to make a big difference. So that's why when you see these forecasts, just know that we're going to be watching it and keeping you updated. And I suspect we'll be updating this as we go through the night into the early morning hours.
And personally, I've done weather in lots of different scenarios. I've mentioned Oklahoma. We had sub-zero wind chills multiple times while I was out there. I would say the worst weather you can experience, just with regards to how it feels, is 33 degrees and rain.
Soak you to the bone, chill you to the bone.
Yes, not cold enough to get sleet or snow, but yeah, just bone chilling. You're just soaked. It
Yeah.
feels miserable. And there's a very good chance we see some of that tomorrow night and into Wednesday morning. Now, these are your Wednesday morning lows. So many of these areas, especially inland, you're talking Baker, Columbia County, McClenny over to Lake City, upper 20s are very, very possible. So although we might have warmer air aloft that allows us to see just freezing rain or sleet, when that precipitation hits the ground, especially by Wednesday morning, things certainly do have a very good chance to freeze over. Not just there, but also up across the Okefenokee, Brunswick, similar story, and the western sides of Nassau, Duval County here as well, Tim.
And well, Ross, you can add to this, but what I want to add to that, folks, is you can almost sort of see a sharp demarcation once you get to freezing, and suddenly it drops all the way down to 27, because you can imagine what happens is whether it's snow or even if it's just sleet or freezing rain, but now if you have ice over the ground, none of that heat from the ground can get up. And so therefore things can chill down significantly. So that's why it's really going to matter who actually has the cumulative snow and or ice. Then once that happens and your temperatures drop, which is why, although places like Waycross, your precipitation is going to end quickest on Wednesday morning, because you're going to have those cold temperatures that could really freeze up what ice and snow there is. And so it might take till noon, right, Ross?
Yeah, because our afternoon highs then on Wednesday will probably be in the mid-40s for most of us. We'll have a bit of a wind chill in the low 40s, upper 30s. But actual temperature-wise, yeah, it'll probably be until at least midday, if not into the afternoon, until some of those things start to melt.
I think that's another thing for those who were here in '89, that one of the big differences, we're just not going to go as low as those temperatures went with precipitation. But then also, it's not going to be this 3-day event where we stay below freezing for 3 days. This is going to be relative to the '89 event. And I'm just saying that because some folks are comparing it to '89, that we're going to stay cold, no doubt about it. We're going to stay damp, but we're not going to stay below freezing for days at a time.
So thankfully, you only have to deal with it for, maybe a 12-hour time period?
Yes.
If that.
Thank goodness.
So this is the daytime tomorrow. So we kind of stressed, just going to see some stray to scattered showers. It's going to be overcast, just kind of cold and damp. Then by about 6 to 7 p.m., here comes the leading edge of not only the colder air, but really the largest swath of precipitation. So pretty much for folks from Folkston North up through Waycross, you could easily start to see not only sleet, but potentially just plain old snow by 6, 7 p.m. Similar story for Brunswick, especially once you get to 8 to 9 p.m. Sports director Chris Porter, he was talking to us earlier, Tim, about some basketball games going on up there tomorrow night at like 7 or 8 o'clock. If you're planning on going to that, or just anywhere that has high school basketball going on, especially north of Jacksonville, you're going to want to pay very, very close attention to the timing
iffy.
of this.
Yeah, for the latter part of those games. It'll be interesting to see if in Glenn County they actually have those games, because it does get kind of iffy. On the other hand, like Ross mentioned, that although for especially you folks in southeastern Georgia up toward Waycross, you might see something frozen prior to 7, at least the surface temperature should be above freezing. So although, of course, I would do anything you can to be done by 4 o'clock up there, if for some reason you just have to be out and about, I would suspect you don't have to worry about the road starting to lock up until after like 7 or 8.
Yeah, because, you might see snow falling, but it might not start laying until the temperature drops to at least 32, if not 31 or 30 degrees. Now, areas further south, you see that just kind of strip of pink. That's where things start to get a little messy, Tim. That could be freezing rain, that could be sleet. It really depends on how thick the warmer air aloft is that is warmer than freezing.
Do we have a graphic for sleet, or should we talk about that again?
I don't know, like an explainer. I don't have one in here.
Yeah. So why don't we briefly talk about it? And I guess this is more for, there are some purists who want to see snowflakes. Now, some folks don't care. If it's frozen, it's fun. So although this can be a very serious situation, I thought we'd have a little briefly period of fun. So if you want to see snowflakes, what you want to see is the atmosphere at least from 3,000 to 5,000 feet up, at least below 30 degrees, right? And as you get up toward 10,000 feet, maybe below about 25 degrees. And the reason you see that pink there, or at least you don't see the blue, which is an area where you could have freezing rain or sleet, is because the temperatures all the way up to about 10,000 feet, if they're at freezing, they're just barely at freezing. So what's happening is basically what you're having is more like an ice pellet. When you call sleet more like an ice pellet versus a snowflake.
Oh yeah, it's completely an ice pellet because it's frozen initially, and then it falls through the warm layer, then it melts into essentially a raindrop, and then refreezes again before it reaches the surface. So you don't get that nice looking snowflake.
Right.
You just get this.
So some folks, if all you care about is seeing something white falling through the street lights at night, then maybe sleet is okay. But that's one of the reasons why, again, for most of us, outside of maybe a flake or two, just as it all comes to an end, if it does get frozen, it's just going to be freezing rain and or sleet, ice pellets.
And I think the hardest thing, not only for this situation, but any type of forecast that involves where that rain or snow line is dependent upon really two things, I think, Tim. The first, you mentioned that surface temperature. If it's 1 or 2 degrees below freezing or above freezing, that can really dictate whether, one, things actually freeze on contact, or two, if you even happen to see snow or sleet, that dictates the type of precipitation that you see. But also the second thing is the temperatures aloft that you also said, 3,000 to 5,000 feet. If it's 1 or 2 degrees warmer than maybe what models were trying to depict, that can totally bust a forecast on what you were anticipating. Or if that, warmer air is a little bit further south or a little bit further north, that can also drag that freezing rain line 10 miles further south than maybe you expected, and can also just kind of very much skew what you happen to see.
Now, I do want to throw something at you for just a second, but first, since you have the winds up, I totally agree with what Ross is saying is about the key ingredients. Another ingredient here is the fact that we have the ocean and we have the river, we have the estuaries, and as much as it may seem cold to us, remember the river and the ocean, those temperatures are in the 50s, well above freezing. And so the longer winds stay out of the north and northeast, that is off the ocean, off the estuary, off the river, then that's going to hold those surface temperatures a little bit warmer. Now, I mention that because I promise you, 43 years ago, the computer models did a terrible job with that. But the computer models are getting better. And I've talked to Ross about this, that in my opinion, although having weather experience is great, one of the tough things is I go back to how bad the computer models used to be. That is, they didn't handle that warming of the oceans well. And so that's sort of still in my head. They handle that better now. And so at least what I'm wondering in my head as we get closer and closer, and what I'll be watching very closely, is how well do the computer models end up handling that influx of that milder air and those higher dew points, and that wind, whether it's, if the wind goes right, if you look closely here, it doesn't look like much of a shift, folks, but if that wind goes north-northwest versus north-northeast, that's going to make a big difference in a lot of areas, especially as far as whether it's just rain or freezing rain.
Well, Tim, I think we do expect that warmer air to gradually erode, or the milder air to erode at least somewhat. The big question is, to what extent does it erode and how quickly does it?
And I guess the point I'm also trying to make is, and how it does that then becomes sort of a double feedback. In other words, the quicker it chills down just because of the atmosphere, then that creates an inversion, and then it's even harder for that warmer, because it's less dense north and northeast wind to come in, and therefore, you know what I mean? It can well, like, it's like a double feedback. It then almost helps it get colder or helps it get warmer. In other words, I think, for instance, right here, I think there's going to be a much sharper demarcation in those temperatures. I wouldn't be surprised if some temperatures are a little farther to the west, or maybe a degree or two colder, and wouldn't be surprised if some of those coastal temperatures are 2 to 3 degrees warmer.
Yeah.
That it almost sets up its own kind of front there,
Well, I think I'd kind of say, just timing-wise for folks, it's not going to be until likely after midnight that we start to watch much closer for some of that mixing to occur towards the more populated areas. So Nassau, Duval, Clay County, have a much better chance out towards Lake City. I think Lake City might be in that sweet spot, unfortunately, where they could see a real decent amount of ice
Yes.
accumulate here.
Yes, agreed. So anybody traveling out on I-10, I agree that overpasses and bridges out there could really get to be messy. It's going to be interesting to see out toward the Swanee River Valley how far south that goes. You know, like maybe, like for instance, I-75 could be a problem even further south than maybe what's depicted here. But we're also making the point here, hopefully, folks, why if the schools are closed in Duval and if they're closed in Clay, this is why it's going to happen for Wednesday, not for Tuesday.
Yeah, because, again, most of this is going to be overnight, early Wednesday morning. By 5, 6 a.m., you start to see things gradually moving on out. And then, as we had said earlier, by pretty much 8 a.m., the precipitation will likely come to an end. It'll just take a few hours yet for any areas that did freeze over or those bridges, those overpasses. You're going to need to allow some time for the temperatures to gradually warm back up. And then, do you want me to go back?
Can you go back? Wow, folks, these young meteorologists are amazing.
I'm gonna have to advance it here a couple times to get back through.
Okay, because what I noticed in that graphic that you had at like the 8 a.m. graphic, it gets toward that as you get toward 8. There you go. So, folks, look at that temperature contrast now. So where they had snow and ice. Temperatures middle 20s, maybe Valdosta 22. I wouldn't argue with that, right? If they actually do get that.
If they have snow laying on the ground or just some sort of frozen ice, that temperature is probably
Whereas look
accurate.
at Mayport, 37, and look at the demarcation even from Mayport over to NES Jax or the airport, and notice also the winds. This depicts a north-northeast wind out on the islands, which would be off that warmer ocean, and then right around the intracoastal, it's a north-northwest wind, and that can make a big difference in temperatures, even maybe more than that. Now, the precipitation would be over, but I guess the point I'm making, it's why that although some of you folks, in fact, maybe Waycross, maybe the west side, you even get to see some sun by mid-morning, but because your temperatures were colder because of the ice, it may take a while for things to thaw out safely.
So perhaps a little bit of a deep freeze there for a large portion of the day on Wednesday for those folks. So the next couple things we just want to go through are, we're going to start off with like model data for ice and snow, and then we're going to give you what we think is probably the most likelihood for accumulations for both of those factors. So this is kind of just showing you your freezing rain potential, a glaze to what could be 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch in some areas. So this just kind of gives you an overall idea of areas that could see the most ice accumulation. So this is actual rain that freezes and then gradually begins to build up. So
let me underline. Ross made this graphic, and it's a great graphic. So for those of you who wondering, well, what's the difference between 1/10 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch of ice? Of course, it's all bad. But once you get to 1/4 of an inch, notice Ross has the power outages highlighted there. And what happens is the accumulation of ice on the power lines, accumulation on trees, especially trees with leaves, and we have a lot of trees that are leaves through the year, right? That's a lot of weight that can start bringing down power lines, and therefore you start losing power outages. And I can't help it, especially feel for folks up around Waycross that had 2 hurricanes that knocked out power, right, from the trees, and you could be looking at possibly another event. Now, worse during the summer, that means you don't have AC. But during the winter, that could mean no heat. So hopefully you folks, especially in Waycross, but maybe even down to Lake City, you're thinking about the possibility of what if we don't have power and those temperatures are in the 20s and 30s for a while.
Yeah, I mean, ice storms can be crippling for folks. I've seen that before. We're not dubbing this an ice storm. I don't think it's to that threshold yet, because once you do get over 1/4 of an inch and you get closer to a 1/2 inch of ice, although it might not sound like a lot, I mean, a 1/2 inch of ice on all of your trees, on all your power lines, not only is that going to cause significant damage, to your branches and trees and things of that nature, but those power lines, they're going to be coming down. So we don't have it to that point yet, but we will watch for the power outages in that moderate kind of pink colored or shaded area. Very icy roads. Bringing it a little bit further south, so Duval County, for the most part, We're primarily looking for some isolated, slick, icy spots, especially on the west and northwest sides, who have the best chance to see some of that freezing rain, but also the bridges as well. You have that colder air blowing underneath the bridges and overpasses, which allows the surface temperature on the bridges to just cool off faster than the normal ground. So we're going to watch very closely to see how those conditions on the bridges develop and whether there will be any closures or things like that. Tim probably has much more of an idea on the threshold for some of those.
Well, I think right now, and again, we're going to watch closely every single bridge, but if there's a chance high enough for concern, you're wondering which bridges would those be. In my opinion, I think it would be, the intersection of 295 and I-95 heading toward the airport and those ramps from that point north. And then in Duval on I-10 and 295, that interchange west, that those overpasses, those ramps are, I think, at least enough of a concern to where you might want to think about, so you don't have to worry about, give yourself an alternate route. Now, I know we want to get to county by county. We're running down to about 5 minutes, right?
Yeah, we'll go through the snow here pretty fast because most folks are not going to see snow. I think areas pretty much across southeast Georgia have the best chance to see snow. There might be some flakes seen in western Nassau County, maybe northwest Duval. I think that's pretty unlikely. But that's just model data. Here is our official snow forecast for the First Coast. A trace to a 1 inch for northern Columbia, Baker, and Nassau County, and then up across the Okefenokee up towards Pierce and northern Ware and the Waycross area. That is your best chance to actually see accumulating snowfall. You'd wake up to a white front yard Wednesday morning potentially. 1 to 2 inches. I think far northern portions of the First Coast, though, could see 2 to 4 in some spots, Tim.
So treacherous, but I know some folks think of that as the fun part of the forecast. I suspect you could make a few snowmen out of in these parts even 1 inch. I've seen it happen. I've seen people make amazing snowmen with 1 inch of snow. So
we probably should reiterate or just emphasize the snow is also included in sleet. So this is any sort of frozen precipitation that's already frozen when it hits the ground. These are the totals for that. And sleet will mix into some areas farther south than what we currently have shaded there.
And on the serious side of this, in case folks it's not highlighted enough, because nearly all of us will have some freezing rain, at least if you go from the 1 to 2 inch amount south, that will happen after freezing rain. So as fun as the snow could be, that could really be a treacherous combination.
Yeah, because you'd have a layer of ice and then a layer of snow on top of that. So Tim's mentioned the county by county a couple times. I'll let you take it away here for the start, and we can just kind of bounce back and forth between them, Tim, to break it down.
Okay, great. So here we go. Here's Ware, Brantley, and Pierce. Notice we're starting at 4 p.m. there because we think it could even start as a rain, sleet, snow mix, but at least probably not dropping on the surface to freezing until about 7 or 8 o'clock. Still, if you can get off the roads by 4 p.m., I would, and I would suspect this is why most of those schools in that area, they're going to be getting out early tomorrow, if they're not actually closed.
And would you probably say that's probably has the best potential to be one of the hardest hit areas from this winter system?
Yeah, I agree, because the whole combination, right? That yes, they're going to have some fun snow, but also with the freezing rain and the sleet.
Yeah.
And so now we move a little farther to the southeast, and so for the most part, we'll start off as rain and then shift over to ice, possibly some snow. So we're talking about Glenn, Camden, Charlton, and Nassau counties. And just think the farther to the southeast you are, that is for coastal Camden and for Nassau County, then the longer it will be, or the deeper into Wednesday morning it'll be before things freeze over. Obviously, the nearer to the coast you are, the longest it's going to take for the bridges. But because a north and even northeast wind for you folks in Glenn County can still mean more off the land, I would still be concerned about bridges even going to the islands in Glenn County. So I would be concerned about all bridges in Glenn County. Maybe in Camden County you're okay as you get down towards St. Mary's, but it gets pretty iffy. And then we've mentioned Lake City. So here's Columbia, Baker, Union, and Bradford. It could be that northern northern Columbia County, you get some snow, but the longest duration of freezing rain could actually be in like the Lake City and even McClenny area of Baker County.
I've seen some model data show a strip of pretty high ice totals of at least a tenth, if not over a quarter, possibly from Lake City up through McClenny and then into western Nassau. So hopefully that's not the case.
Hopefully not. But that is I-10, and although normally I would say the interstates are going to be fine, but especially if you have plans to go west, then those overpasses there could be iffy for a while.
Let's bring it in right here to home, Tim.
Okay.
Duval County here.
So we've talked about the bridges that we think have a significant enough chance of shutting down because of ice. So that's the 295 and I-95 interchange up by the airport, the 295 and I-10 interchange in western Duval. But if you don't want to worry about it at all, just think if you have to take a bridge, take the lowest bridge, the bridge closest to the warmer waters, and that, of course, would be the Main Street Bridge, the Buckman Bridge, because it's relatively low, except for the hump there, and it's farther to the south. You're probably going to be in pretty good shape, too. Danes Point Bridge is going to be iffy just because it's so high. I think the Matthews and Hart will be okay, but obviously they're on the fringes, so they get iffy. The intercoastal bridges, I think, should be fine. Again, because we're talking about a degree or two, I don't think any of us are going to be relaxed until that all actually happens. So for Clay County, again, west of Highway 17, things get iffy, especially talking about the bridges in Clay County, but at least you're farther off to the south. But I think, especially if you get over toward Middleburg, down toward Keystone Heights, maybe even western Oakleaf, any overpasses out there, be aware of the fact that might mess with the travel in Putnam County and St. John's and Flagler. So we're not saying that as this thing comes to an end, maybe Ross, between 6 and 8 in the morning, that you might see an ice pellet, you might see a flake, but at least at this point, we don't think it's going to be a problem with overpasses and bridges down there. Western Putnam County, maybe as you get in toward Interlochen, gets iffy.
Yeah, I will say models have shown once this thing starts to move on out by, let's say, sunrise Wednesday morning, it looks like a decent amount of dry air is entrained in on the backside, that the amount of moisture content aloft starts to drop off pretty rapidly as this thing begins to move offshore. Would you agree?
Yes.
So
that will be nice to see.
A very interesting forecast here, Tim.
Nothing boring about this, that's for sure.
Always keeping us on our toes here at First Coast News. We appreciate you tuning in to this live stream. Again, that is Chief Meteorologist Tim Deegan. I am Meteorologist Ross Mummah. Tim will be live, hopefully, on the 7 o'clock news here, if they're still having it, on ABC 25. So tune in for that. If you want to hear more from Tim, I will be on at 11 p.m. tonight. But if not, hopefully stay warm, stay safe updated out there.
Yeah.
Yes, and we'll have much more here for you coming up over the next day or so. Take care.